everybody, we have overflow in 154 in case of the standing issue or needing to move issue. Number 2, we have a fairly significant number of people who have signed up to speak on this bill. Looking down through here, we have a whole lot of yeses. And with that in mind, we will need to be out of here by about 10 till 2. And then at 5 to 2, I'm going to start getting really angry, and we're going to have to get out of here. Does that make sense? So that's the time constraint we're under. So if you are a bunch of yeses on presenters, you may want to try to, or supporters that want to speak, you may want to try to group together outside and find out who is going to be your spokesperson or spokespersons. Because when we hit that time frame, if there's a motion a second, we're going to be moving on because we can't stay here. We have to go to session. Understood? Yes, no, yes. All right. Representative Maddox, if you'll introduce yourself and proceed, please.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Petrie and fellow members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm Savannah Maddox, representative of the 61st House District, and I present to you this afternoon Senate Bill 150, a bill which is intended to expand the ability of law-abiding citizens to exercise their Second Amendment rights in accordance with the United States Constitution. I have the privilege of introducing to you an expert in these matters who can speak knowledgeably to the importance and necessity of this legislation. Dr. John Lott, Jr. is an economist and a world-recognized expert on guns and crime. He has held research or teaching positions at various academic institutions, including the University of Chicago, Yale University, the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, Stanford University, and Rice University, and was the chief economist at the United States Sentencing Commission during 1988 through 1989. He is currently a contributor to the Hill newspaper and columnist for Fox News and Townhall.com. He holds a PhD in economics from UCLA. Nobel laureate Milton Friedman noted, "John Lott has few equals as a perceptive analyst of controversial public policy issues. He is a prolific author for both academic and popular publications. He has published over 100 articles in peer-reviewed academic journals and written 9 books." So thank you, Dr. Lott. Appreciate your willingness to testify.
Well, I appreciate Representative Maddox asking me to come and talk about this. You know, there's so much of the gun control debate involves things might possibly happen. Well, in this case, with this constitutional carry, we really don't need to guess because we have a number of states, 14 states, that actually have already passed such legislation. The concerns that are raised generally that I've been reading about with regard to this constitutional carry bill are remarkably similar to the concerns that were raised back in 1995 and 1996 when the concealed carry bill was originally passed. And as has happened with the states that passed constitutional carry as well as the ones that passed the original right to carry bills, those concerns haven't gone anyplace. In fact, one thing that's interesting, we have 14 states that have this right now: Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Idaho, Kansas, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, New Hampshire, North Dakota, South Dakota, Vermont, West Virginia, and Wyoming. None of the states that have had this have even had a legislative hearing to consider reversing their original decision to adopt this. There are other states that have similar types of rules. Montana, for example, essentially has constitutional carry in about 99.4% of the state. It's only within places that are classified as cities, which are 6 cities in Montana, which within the city limits you have to have a permit. For Oklahoma and Virginia, they recognize states that have constitutional carry for people to be able to go and carry within their states without having a permit. There are restrictions that you see. Probably the major one that differentiates some of the states, there are 3 states, but only 3 states that limit constitutional carry to the residents of those states, and that's basically North Dakota, Idaho, and Wyoming. There's a similar thing that occurs with regard to open carry. You have 24 states that have essentially constitutional open carry, which don't require a permit, and also have prohibitions on local restrictions. You have another 6 states that don't require a permit, but do allow some type of local restrictions. Those are usually limited to large cities. So like in Pennsylvania, the 2 cities where it's restrictive are Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Kentucky, just to give you a little bit of background, about 11.4% of adults in Kentucky have a concealed carry permit. That makes it 10th among the states. Nationwide, about 8% of adults have a concealed carry permit. The cost of getting a permit in Kentucky is $60. That puts it almost exactly at the national average in terms of permit costs. But you have a few states like Illinois and California and New York which have very high fees, and that raises the average quite a bit. As far as training goes, there's a 6-hour basic class, and then 1 to 2 hours of classroom training is typically the case. That is substantially more training that you see on average across the country. 22 states allow people to carry concealed without having training. At the other extreme, you have a couple states, Illinois and California, which requires 8 hours. But most of the other states are basically going to be in the 4 to 5 hour range. So Kentucky is definitely on the high end right now in terms of training. There's generally a strong relationship between costs and the percentage of people who carry, and also the composition of people who carry. And the main impact seems to be on poorer individuals. If my research convinces me of anything, it's basically poor individuals, particularly poor minorities, are the ones who benefit the most from having the option to be able to go and carry a gun. People who are most likely to be victims of violent crime benefit the most from having the option to be able to go and protect themselves. Police are obviously extremely important, but police almost always arrive on the crime scene after the crime's occurred, and the people who are most likely to be victims of violent crime, having a gun is by far the safest course of action for them to be able to go and protect themselves. And so things that lower the costs from them to be able to go and carry will increase the number of people who carry, but will primarily impact poor individuals, particularly poor minorities, to be able to make sure that they're going to be able to go and carry. When you look across the states in terms of training requirements, there's no correlation that you observe between having longer or even having training requirements and the revocation rate. One thing you observe with concealed carry permit holders is how incredibly law-abiding they are. What you find is that for any type of reason, you're talking about tenths or hundredths of 1 percentage point for revocation. When you're talking about revocations for any type of firearms-related violation, you're talking about hundreds or thousands of 1 percentage point. Most states are in the thousands of a percentage point. Right now, we have about 17.5 million concealed carry permit holders in the United States. So there's a huge amount of data out there in terms of revocation rates. Kentucky has a revocation rate at an annual rate of about 0.16%, but obviously that includes a lot of things that have nothing to do with commission of crimes. For example, you can have things like being behind in child support and other things will cause one to go and lose their license to be able to go and carry. Just to give you an idea how law-abiding permit holders are generally, not only are we talking about hundreds or thousands, 1 percentage point, but you can even compare them to people that we have data for, such as police. Police are very rarely convicted of any type of crime compared to the general population. They're convicted about 1/21st the rate of the general population for any type of misdemeanors or felonies, and convicted about 1/30th the rate of the general population in terms of firearms-related violations. Concealed carry permit holders are convicted at much lower rates than police officers are. They're convicted about 1/10 the rate that police officers are for misdemeanors or felonies. I don't have the data for Kentucky because Kentucky doesn't bring it out, but for the states that we do, and they're convicted at about 1/7 the rate that police officers are for any type of firearms-related violations. So now, one thing you can also look at is basically, what's happened to crime rates and also accidental gun deaths before and after states have adopted constitutional carry. There are 3 states that have had these laws in effect for at least 5 years. And if you look at the different types of crime and all categories of violent crime, the average rate in the 5 years after adoption is lower than it was beforehand. You can do more sophisticated analysis, and obviously you need to because a lot of other things are changing. A number of these states have only had these laws in effect for a couple years, though. If you run regression analysis on this, looking at data for the entire United States up to 2017, and you try to account for a range of different factors, such as the impact of law enforcement through things like arrest rates, pre-existing trends in states in terms of crime that adopt these laws, trying to pull out the pre-existing average differences across states, trying to deal with yearly national changes in crime rates because crime rates tend to go up and down generally across the whole country, and other factors. What you find is that there's evidence that murder rates, rape rates, and aggravated assault rates tend to statistically significantly decline. There's no statistically significant change with regard to robbery. And there's no statistically significant change with regard to accidental gun deaths. Those seem to fall, but not by any statistical amount. So what would we expect with regard to this? If you were to pass such a law, you're going to see either a slowing down of the growth rate or actually a slight drop in terms of concealed carry permits. Some people would have gotten those will no longer go and get them. People may want to have a permit so that they could go and travel to other states. One thing that's interesting is that for several states that we've been able to get some data for, when you move to a constitutional carry, there appears to be more people signing up for classes to be able to go and get training. So even when training isn't mandated, you'll see an increase in the rate at which people are going to get training. You see some changes in the composition of the training classes that occur there. I think they become more practically oriented type classes and things that actually are many times even more relevant for people carrying than have been mandated in the training rules that you see in different states. I guess the other thing, as I mentioned before, you're going to see a change in the composition of people who carry. Basically, poorer individuals and more minorities are going to be more likely to carry as a result of changing this law than you saw previously. The people who are most likely victims of violent crime are going to have a chance with this law that they wouldn't have had previously to be able to go and protect themselves. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Maddox, anybody else?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll remind everybody there's plenty to say, plenty to think about.
Sure.
We are on the clock.
Absolutely. Chairman Petrie, I would like to introduce first from the National Rifle Association, Arthur Tom.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee. On behalf of the tens of thousands of Kentucky members of the National Rifle Association, I stand to express our strong support and urge you to pass permitless carry legislation from committee. This important legislation will repeal the existing provision of law requiring a person to obtain a concealed carry permit in order to discreetly carry a firearm for self-protection in the state of Kentucky. In Kentucky, existing law already allows a person to carry openly carry a firearm without a permit, and this would do nothing but decriminalize the donning of a coat. Permitless carry does not in any way change who can carry, where they can carry, or how they can carry. Some of the arguments that you'll hear about this bill is that it's a danger to law enforcement, it's a danger to the community because of crime statistics and crime-ridden parts of the state. This, again, changes nothing on who can carry, who's lawful to possess a firearm, where they can, or the places they can take it. Only law-abiding citizens are currently obtaining permits. Allowing these citizens to carry concealed without a permit will not change the fact that they're law-abiding. Criminals, on the other hand, are already carrying concealed firearms within Kentucky without permits. Those with existing criminal records, again, will be barred from carrying a gun concealed in this state. They say that some of the things you'll hear is this is going to eliminate the concealed carry permit in the state of Kentucky. In this language, the concealed carry permit in the state of Kentucky is protected, and all of the reasons and all that to get one, the next bypass check, carrying in areas that you may not be able to carry without a permit, reciprocity will all be protected. The training requirements, all of that you have to get, are protected in the bill. As far as the loss of revenue for potential permits, we look at states like Arizona, and their permits tripled from the time that they passed this legislation. So it's not even that people are going to stop getting their permits. In fact, it's likely, as in the rest of the states, that people will continue to obtain more permits. I appreciate your time, and again, urge you to pass from committee Senate Bill 150. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, I also have from the National Association for Gun Rights, Brendan Boudreau.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time. I won't go into my full written testimony. I provided a copy for all of you, and a lot of good things have already been said.
And then that documentation is in our packets.
That's correct. Yes, thank you. On behalf of our 50,000 members and supporters here in the state of Kentucky, Commonwealth of Kentucky, we urge a yes vote on Senate Bill 150 without amendment.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to present this and understand the time sensitivity.
Thank you, and there may be questions that come up, but I would like to go ahead and get to presenters, other persons that want to speak on the bill. Bear with me just a second. I have several that have signed up from Moms Demand Action, at least that's the way it's listed here, and I would highly ask, try to find one or two that can. We'll work under time constraints. I've also got CCDW classes. Somebody here on that? Gotcha. Take Back Kentucky. Someone here? Somewhere? Corner? All right. And then I have the Kentucky Council of Churches over here. I'm going to let the moms kind of figure out who's going to speak. Can we do that? And if I see you appearing in a similar shirt, I'm going to assume that these people that speak for you, and you would generally say amen. Okay. Proceed, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Petrie and members of the committee. My name is Connie Courtney. This is Anita Franklin, and I'll let her introduce herself, and I'll let the gentleman to my left introduce themselves. I speak this afternoon as a mother, a resident of Oldham County, and the Kentucky chapter leader of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Nationally, Moms Demand Action has more than 5 million supporters, making our organization the largest gun violence prevention group in the country. We are nonpartisan, grassroots, and all volunteers, and we pattern ourselves after Mothers Against Drunk Driving. The most important role I have in life is that of a mother. As a mom to 4 kids, I've spent countless hours with my children in public spaces throughout Kentucky. Not only have I been responsible for my children out in public, but for countless other children through my various volunteer positions. As a Girl Scout leader, I was required to pass a background check and attend 2 hours of training before I could even hold the first meeting. Prior to taking my troop camping for the first time, I had to attend an 8-hour training session. As a Christian education teacher at my church, I was required to pass a background check and complete 6 hours of training regarding child safety before I was allowed to walk in the classroom. I have no problem with these requirements because I know that training is vital. Training prepares us for the unexpected and keeps my children and your children safe. I share this background with you today because we have a key public safety issue in front of you: the future of Kentucky's permitting system for those who want to carry a concealed, loaded weapon in public. Kentucky's current system has been in place since 1996. According to the state police report, over 470,000 concealed carry permits have been issued in Kentucky. That's a significant number of people who've gone through a background check to ensure they are not prohibited from having a firearm in the first place. In addition, each month the state police runs a monthly background check to ensure those permit holders are still eligible to carry that weapon. However, there are additional numbers that are reported in that annual report. The number of permits that have been revoked, suspended, or denied. Since the inception of the program, state police have denied over 10,000 permits, suspended 7,000 permits, and revoked over 6,000 permits. These were suspended for various reasons, ranging from failing a background check to an issuance of a domestic violence order or missed training certificates. Our permit system is vital for keeping our communities and law enforcement safe. It serves as a first line of defense, ensuring that felons, domestic abusers, and those convicted of violent misdemeanors like assault, terroristic threatening, can't get a concealed carry permit. These core public safety standards make us all safer, and SB150 would erase them all. Those who apply for the permit also receive training on how to safely handle their weapon, how to store their weapon, and when it's lawful for them to use the weapon. The common sense safety requirements, those would also be eliminated by this dangerous bill. Now, the bill's sponsor testified in the Senate hearing that this bill was to protect a young mother who was caught up in a heartbreaking domestic violence situation. And I know everyone in this room, including me, would want to do everything we can to keep that young mother and her children safe. However, is putting a firearm in her hands without any training going to keep her and her children safe? Knowing how to use that firearm properly might be the one thing that actually keeps her and her children safe. One must question the alleged concern for this young mother. Would any committee member here that was concerned for this woman, would you put a firearm in the hand of your daughter without any training whatsoever? My guess is no. At least I hope your answer would be no. I believe that you would want your daughter or your son to have as much training as possible so that if it's ever necessary for them to use that weapon for protection, they would know how to use it safely. We have heard from Kentuckians across the state on this issue. An overwhelming amount of gun owners, concealed carry permit holders, have reached out to us and expressed their strong opposition to SB150. Recent polling shows that 9 out of 10 gun owners in Kentucky support our current state law requiring a permit and safety training in order to carry a loaded concealed weapon in public. That same poll shows that 72% of Kentucky voters would be less likely to vote for legislators who support permitless carry. One Kentuckian and a military veteran stated, "As a gun owner and a concealed carry permit holder, I'm extremely disappointed in the stance by the NRA and our lawmakers' willingness to support it. Every person who handles a weapon should be properly trained. To receive my permit in North Carolina, I had to participate in 16 hours of training, including safe handling, applicable laws, and home safety. I'd received much of this prior to my time in the Air Force, but I was more than willing to complete it since I felt that anyone who handles a weapon should be properly trained. I will fight for my amendment rights, but I will also be a fierce advocate for smart safety regulations. Our existing permit system works and keeps us all safe. It ensures that persons who choose to carry a concealed weapon have received training to protect themselves, their families, and the community at large. I urge you to see SB150 for what it is, a solution looking for a problem. As our elected representatives and our voice in Frankfort, I believe your primary responsibilities is to ensure that all Kentuckians are safe. It is your duty to put the safety of my children and your children above any outside influences or interest. I urge you to ask yourself these two basic questions as you consider SB 150. Does it keep our law enforcement and first responders safer? The answer is no. Does it make Kentucky a safer place for my children, your grandchildren, and for all Kentuckians? And the answer is no, it does not. SB 150 increases the likelihood that you, myself, and everyone in this room will find ourselves around people who are carrying a hidden firearm that don't know how to use them, including violent criminals and other people with dangerous histories. Chairman Petrie, members of this committee, this is not a constitutional issue. This is a public safety issue. I urge you to focus on the safety of all the Kentuckians, and for these reasons, I urge you to oppose SB 150.
Thank you. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Anita Franklin. I live in Lexington, and I'm a member of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Thank you for allowing me to speak before you to express why I feel SB 150 is not a good decision for Kentucky. All concealed weapons should have permits. There are many reasons our existing system should stay in place, and I will speak about a couple of those. Across Kentucky, our sheriff office will lose $1.4 million because they are a fee-based offices and receive a fee for processing the permit application. Two, most importantly, removing the permits can be dangerous to our law enforcement officers and a risk for public safety. As you heard before, the bar should not be lowered. I would like to briefly share my personal experience with you. On January 13th, I celebrated my son's would-be 25th birthday. I celebrated without him because he lost his life to a senseless act of gun violence in Lexington at a local park in April 2014. Antonio wasn't a typical African-American young male. He was in his second year of college, so he was a college student. Antonio has a sister who has her PhD, and he has a younger brother who is in his third year at the University of Kentucky. I won't express why I gave that data about my children, but he was not a typical young man. He was caught in the crossfire when two groups of teenagers, ages 15 to 17, there were four of them, 15 years old, 17 years old, shooting. This particular day in our park was loaded with children and adults. Antonio Franklin Jr. was 21 years old. He had just turned 21 a mere 3 months. When people speak of Antonio, they use adjectives such as true victim, because he wasn't dealing drugs and he wasn't committing a crime. He was playing basketball. Happy and full of potential. We will never know his full potential because of this careless careless act of gun violence. The photo I share is not what a parent wants to share. I would rather share a photo of him graduating from college or a picture at his wedding, not a picture of him lying in his coffin. Each time there's an act of gun violence, we are re-victimized, whether we know the people involved or not. We cannot let the privilege of owning a gun get out of control by removing laws that hold people accountable. We have an epidemic that is spiraling out of control. Guns are getting back into the hands of wrong people. We need to continue our checks and balance system. Our existing permitting system serves that role. It helps ensure dangerous people cannot get concealed carry permits. It helps ensure that those who do not qualify for a permit know how to use guns safely, and they have document ownership of that piece of equipment. That's the point. I'm sure a lot of people in this room personally know someone that's been affected by gun violence or a misuse of a weapon. I want you to know that you are now considered a survivor because I've shared my story with you today. You are now part of my life. I know someone out here is saying it's not me. I'm a nurse, and I thought it would never be me or someone in my family. I never thought that I would have to come and speak before you, and you don't know how I feel having to tell my story. I don't want you to have to be in that same situation. I know someone else will have to deal with the tragedy my family and many others have to deal with on a daily basis. Members of the committee, no one is immune from gun violence. For that reason, our expectations as to who can carry a concealed weapon, gun in public, should not waver. We must do everything we can to make sure dangerous people don't get to carry concealed guns in public or anywhere else. We think about the mass murders that are occurring in our world today. Imagine a person having a concealed weapon and we don't know anything about it until the tragedy has started. It's not just for me, it's for all of us. Antonio is with God, but I'm advocating for the next potential victim or victims. I sit before you and I beg you to put a stop to SB150. You have the power to do that. We're now in this together, no matter what your decision may be. God bless you, and thank you for this opportunity and your time.
Hello, my name is William Hibbs. I'm a major with the Louisville Metro Police Department. I'm here in representation of Chief Conrad and Louisville Metro Police Department, and we oppose Senate Bill 150. The prevalence of guns on our street is a huge safety risk for the public and the men and women of law enforcement. Allowing people to carry concealed without a permit will encourage more people to carry weapons at all times, oftentimes, as been mentioned, without any training at all. Louisville Metro Police Department is big city policing, but I need to discuss specifically the unit that I lead. I lead the 9th Mobile Division. 40 people, that's it. It's a department built of 1,275 members. We are just 40. September 27th, 2015, we became a division. We have seized 2,045 guns since that date, and 825 of those have been on convicted felons. These are people that have been told once, twice, 3 times, sometimes 4 times from people that we've arrested, you cannot carry a weapon, and it still goes on. 40% of these people, of the guns we've seized, have been on convicted felons. Being able to prevent people from carrying without a permit does give us a tool to take guns from people who may have the intention to create harm. There's a November 2017 report for the Johns Hopkins Center of Gun Policy and Research that points to 3 separate studies that shows that violent crime increased in states that adopted rights to carry laws. Each of these 3 reports cited showed violent crime increased each year in those states by as much as 11 to 14%. Before I conclude, I need to also stress the fact that this year already, this small group that I lead has already seized 110 weapons. 44 of those weapons were on convicted felons. 13 have been on juveniles. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
And very quickly, I apologize, I didn't recognize Louisville Metro, who had signed up on the list. I'm glad you came on up.
Chair Petrie and members of the committee, thank you for your time this afternoon. My name is Carl Stankovic, and I'm a resident of LaRue County, a member of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, and a retired member of the Kentucky Association of Chiefs of Police. Let me start by saying I'm a gun guy. I grew up playing with toy guns. I got my first real gun at age 14. My grade school basketball coach taught me firearm safety and marksmanship. In college, I took a course that, upon my successful completion, made me an NRA pistol, rifle, and shotgun instructor. I chose law enforcement as a career and shot competitively for my agency, attaining an NRA master classification. I was also a trained firearms instructor for my agency. In this role, I created and implemented firearms training exercises for new and experienced employees. To this day, I'm an avid hunter. It is with this experience that I say that Senate Bill 150 endangers law enforcement and the public. It is with this experience that I appear before you today and urge you to oppose this dangerous bill. People who go into law enforcement receive intensive initial firearms training. They also have a requirement for continual training and evaluation that may entail shooting quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. Those who serve in specialized positions, such as tactical team members, receive additional intensive firearms training. But even with all this training, some people still make mistakes or have accidents, sometimes with tragic results. Yet despite this reality, Senate Bill 150 will let people carry loaded, concealed guns without any training whatsoever. This flies in the face of common sense and would pose an unnecessary danger to all of us, including avid hunters and former law enforcement officers like myself. As former law enforcement, a firearms trainer, and a hunter, I've always considered the training requirements for receiving a concealed carry permit in Kentucky to be woefully inadequate. Think about it. Kentucky has made a score of 55 out of 100 a passing grade. For background, Kentucky's bar for live fire training is already low. A person only has to hit their target 11 times out of 20 to qualify for a concealed carry permit. If I got a 55 on almost any other test in this state, I would fail. Our current training requirements should be strengthened, not completely done away with. It is important to ensure people have at least some experience firing a gun under controlled conditions before allowing them to do so under high-stress conditions or in public. Something is far better than nothing. It is also the responsible thing to do. Public safety demands it. Removing Kentucky's sound, minimal permitting requirements makes absolutely no sense to me. We should put the safety of law enforcement, experienced and responsible gun owners, hunters, and the general public first. We should continue with the current permit process and work to enhance it, but we should not eliminate it. I urge you all to oppose Senate Bill 150. Thank you.
Thank you all, and if we can quickly, and we are still under really tight time, and I've got a feeling a member or two may have a question if we don't watch out. I've got Take Back Kentucky coming up, and I've got Kentucky Council of Churches. You're on deck. You can go ahead and take a chair if you want. And CCDW classes. Thank you. I'm looking at you straight in the face.
Okay.
You understand where we are?
Absolutely, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Folks, my name is Michael Brown. I'm a regular Kentucky citizen who's actually a volunteer for Take Back Kentucky. I want to thank you all for holding this meeting today and considering the bill. I was made aware of this particular bill a couple of years ago when Albert Robinson, the Senate, introduced a bill, and there was a lot of discussion. I'm pleased to see that the bill that has been offered is very well written and put together in a good way. Some of the things that I discovered when I was working with Take Back Kentucky, reading the bills, I did a little bit of research to try to find out whether what happens to someone when they are caught carrying a concealed weapon without a permit, without government permission, without paying a fee to the government for that right to defend yourself. I found out what that entailed. And so here's a couple of the charges that you will get the same kind of misdemeanor for if you carry concealed without a permit. One of them is sexual abuse, 2nd degree. Another is terroristic threatening, 3rd degree. Stalking, 2nd degree, and assault, 4th degree. So the question that I would have is if my...
Representative Mosier, we have a second first. I have a motion and a second on the bill. Just getting the mic back on first and second. Representative Mosier.
All right. I really appreciate everyone being here today. All of the testimony is really compelling. I guess I'd just like to start out by saying I am a gun owner. I am an NRA member. I am also the mother of 5 sons who have all been trained in gun safety. They're all older kids. We have 2 grandkids. I'm also the chair of Health and Family Services, and we are tasked with looking at the mental health issues in our state, our addiction problems, and right now we're talking about school safety. I'm having a hard time with the lack of training that this bill would require. And this is a personal issue because I, as a gun owner, I would not be a gun owner if I didn't have to have my concealed carry. I would not have been comfortable carrying a gun. I didn't grow up on a farm, and I didn't grow up knowing how to shoot. I had never shot a gun when I took my class. So, my comfort level would not have been. I just wouldn't have purchased a gun. So I'm not sure that I understand the argument that the gun ownership and the concealed carry class and training is actually going to go up if we pass this bill. So I'm really conflicted. I really have concerns when the police testify that this is a potential safety issue. And, I guess I have some questions. Does this eliminate background checks? Does this preclude, I guess it doesn't really preclude anyone from carrying openly because we know that we already have that provision, but does this eliminate background checks?
No, I'm Marty Daly. I'm a concealed carry instructor. No, it does not eliminate background checks. In fact, as the gentleman said, the state police do background check approximately every 30 days on all concealed carry holders.
But if we don't have this training, how are we going to do those background checks, and how are we going to know that folks are law-abiding citizens?
That's the main issue, is that people who do not get a concealed carry license, there's no background check that will be done on them unless there's some other reason for it.
Right, and that is my concern. I still have a lot of questions. I think that, there's some things that we can talk about, whether it's training requirements at the point of purchase or, and I understand that there are duplicative background checks, one with concealed carry classes, I guess, and then one at the point of purchase now. Do we need that? There might be some room to give, but, I'm pretty uncomfortable with this right now, the way it's written. That being said, I'm sure there are other comments, and I'll let that all happen. I'm just struggling here.
Representative Maddox.
Yes, Representative Mosier, currently in the state of Kentucky, law-abiding citizens can openly carry who are statutorily eligible to possess a firearm. They can do so without any permit and without any training. Essentially, it comes down to the difference of wearing an outer garment, such as a jacket, over the firearm or not. And as one can reasonably conclude, there is nothing about me having this outer garment that provides any type of training or enables me to safely operate a firearm. And I will make an argument on behalf of myself currently. For a female, there is the argument to be made that open carrying is potentially more dangerous than concealed carrying, in so much as someone who is of greater stature could apprehend me and take the firearm from me and use it against me. Therefore, I think that, to mirror the arguments that Senator Smith made in the Senate, this very much is a function of allowing women to protect themselves and their children in public as well. And also, I heard a comment earlier about owning a firearm being a privilege. That is not a privilege. Owning a firearm for law-abiding citizens is a right. It is absolutely a right. And it is currently being treated as a privilege, much similar to driving on our highways, for instance, which is a privilege. We should not. Law-abiding citizens should not, particularly those over the age of 21 under these conditions, have to ask permission from our government and pay recurrent fees to be able to exercise our Second Amendment rights. Nothing in this bill changes anything about where you can possess a firearm, nor does it prohibit the right of an individual property owner to disallow firearms. It does not change any statute that's governing the use or misuse of firearms or any other component. What this does simply is allows people who are legally eligible to carry a firearm to do so without that permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Nemes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Senator Smith for bringing this bill and making us work through these issues. I want to thank Representative Maddox for carrying this bill. She does a lot of things that I agree with, civil asset forfeiture reform being one. I want to talk a little bit about this bill if I could. I'll try to be brief. I'm a concealed carry licensee. I'm a monthly dues-paying member of my local gun range, and as I sit here today, I've got my SIG P320 on my hip, as I do most days. I recognize that in some places the Second Amendment is under attack. I know that many on the left want to severely limit our gun rights, and in some areas in this country they want to flat out take them away. That's what they tried to do in Chicago and D.C. until the United States Supreme Court said they couldn't do it. Many of these same folks who want to curtail our Second Amendment rights know very little about guns. Couldn't tell you the difference between a gun's frame from its slide. Don't know the difference between an automatic weapon from a semi-automatic weapon. But the right to possess firearms is not under attack in Kentucky. That's right. It's certainly not under attack in this General Assembly.
That's right.
And that's not what this bill's about. We've heard about the difference between open and concealed carry. Those things are very different. Our state's founders recognized this. In Section 1.7 of our state constitution, it provides that we have the right to bear arms in defense of ourselves, and I agree with, and I'll fight for that sacred right. But our founders also stated in Kentucky's Constitution in 1890 that that right is subject to the power of the General Assembly to enact laws related to concealed carry. I have no issue with allowing citizens to carry concealed without requiring a license, but I cannot agree to allowing that ability to carry concealed without training. My sheriffs are against it, strongly against it, both Oldham County and Jefferson County, as is every law enforcement organization that I know of. The League of Cities is against it. The chiefs of police are against it. Many of the gun rights supporters who I've talked to are strongly against this bill because it doesn't require training, not the license part. Some range officers in my local gun range have told me that I would be surprised by how many folks come to get a CCCW carry who have never even held a gun. In my father-in-law's class, 2 people had left the class because they were injured, because they never held a gun. They got a pretty severe slide bite, it sounds to me. So I cannot in good conscience vote for a bill that removes the training requirement to carry concealed. In sum, I want to say this. I would support a bill that would remove government involvement and the requirement to pay for and file a license with the state, but I cannot agree to remove the training requirement of a concealed carry license. I'm interested in working on a bill, maybe this one, maybe another one, to ensure that training is included. But today, I'm going to vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Sorolis.
As with a lot of things, gun safety, respect, and use used to be taught in the home, and mostly they're not anymore. When we grew up, when we were taught to shoot, if we touched that gun before our parents decided we were ready, they would have beat our butts. Untrained gun owners are a grave danger.
Absolutely.
In any situation. And although Representative Maddox is correct that as a woman, sometimes you find you need protection, nothing is more dangerous than holding a weapon while you fumble to get the safety off. That gun will be out of your hands and into the wrongdoer's hands before you can blink. I am a gun owner. I've taken the CCDW class. I support the right to own weapons, but I have been at places where people have come in because of the glorification of guns in the media and rented weapons they had no idea how to shoot. The range I frequent rents weapons, and 3 young women came in and rented Glocks. They had no clue what they were doing. I was so glad I was leaving. It is a right to own a weapon, but I was taught that with rights come responsibilities, and we cannot lift those responsibilities to be a responsible gun owner who knows how to use their weapon and practices regularly so that under stressful situations you can do it with your eyes closed, and it is irresponsible to do otherwise.
Representative Hoover.
No, I just said let's vote.
I'll take that in some form of a motion. How about that? All right, we have a motion. We have a second. It's been called question, and I have. Okay, everybody understand this on the committee, all right? I'm going to take the heat on this some way, somehow. Representative Harris, do you have a question or comment that you absolutely have to
Just
make?
a brief comment, Mr. Chairman. I will be
brief.
There was a time in Kentucky's history when we didn't have these laws, and then we passed them for a reason, and that reason is for safety purposes. There's a history of violence in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, so much so that we have it in our oath that we take as office holders that we won't commit to a duel against another person. I own guns. I've got shotguns. I've got handguns. I'm one of those 170,000 people that got a concealed carry permit. But it's up to us to fix this problem that we have, and this bill does not do that. This bill makes the problem worse. So I will be a no on the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have motion second and a renewed motion second to get it all in gear. Madam Secretary, please call roll.
Representative Blanton?
Yes.
Representative Booker?
Brief, and I mean brief.
Oh, it better be brief.
It's gonna be brief. 3 statements.
There are briefs on the floor we can do also, so brief.
Yeah. I've had relatives that have been murdered. I've had a gun put in my face. I'll speak right now. This will not protect me. It won't protect me. I've lost family to this. 3 names and I'll stop. Philando Castile, E.J. Bradford, Tyrone Booker Jr. No!
Representative Bratcher?
Yes.
Representative Cantrell?
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, it will be brief. I'm going to pass today. I never try to lose sight of the fact that when I sit here, I represent 43,000 people who are not speaking with one voice right now on this issue, based on the communications that I've received from my area where I serve. They're very divergent ideas and opinions on this bill as it is written here today, and I'm going to respect those issues and pass.
Representative Elliott?
Aye.
Representative Fischer?
Yes.
Representative Harris?
No.
Representative Hatton?
Yes.
Representative Hoover? Representative Jenkins?
No.
Representative Kulkarni?
No.
Representative Lee?
Explain my vote briefly, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for missing, I guess, 99% of this presentation. I was in another committee, which turned out to be a little more contentious than normally. But I've heard from both sides on this, and to keep the process moving forward, I vote aye.
Representative Lewis?
Absolutely yes.
Representative Maddox?
Yes.
Representative Massey?
Yes, explain my vote. Briefly, very brief. I certainly think the words of Representative Nemes are very appropriate, but I did contact our local law enforcement in Boone County, and they indicated they were okay with it, so that's my yes.
Representative McCoy?
Yes.
Representative Meeks?
Absolutely not.
Representative Minter?
No.
Representative Mosier?
I'm going to pass. I'd like to just explain my vote quickly. I have constituents who are strongly opposed, strongly for. Again, my constituency is not speaking with one voice on this at all. I think there's work to be done on the training aspect and the background check. So I'm going to pass today.
Representative Nemes?
No.
Representative Reed?
Yes.
Representative Sorolis?
No.
Chairman Petrie?
Yes.
12 yeses.
I don't think it passes.
8, 3, and 3.
And 3 passes. 12 it passes, right?
Mhm.
Yes. All right, having received 12 yes votes, 8 no votes, and 3 passes, it is reported with favorable expression that same should pass.